All right, we're going to kick this thing off. This is Fred Jacobs from Jacobs Media. You are here for the Techsurvey 2020 presentation. I'd like to introduce our partner in all of this, president and publisher of All Access Music Group, all the way from LA, Joel Denver. Hey, Joel.
Hey, Fred, how are you? Well, first of all, thank you for involving us in this and getting all this together. And it's been just a crazy time out there for sure. This is the Jacobs Media Techsurvey 2020 webinar. It's a terrific opportunity to see and hear the most important annual listener survey. We're so proud to say we've been a part of this with Worldwide Radio Summit for all 10 of its years. So thank you to Fred and your entire team up there for what you guys bring us every year. Unfortunately, Worldwide Radio Summit, as well as many other things, has been postponed due to the COVID-19 concerns. And shortly after we called it, Fred and I got together on the phone. We discussed putting this together, and it just was a no-brainer. It would have been an absolute shame to have not had the opportunity to view this important data. And so I'm just very happy that we were all able to pull this off, and we thank all of you for joining us today. So without further ado, take it away, Fred.
Hey, Joel, thank you. And I should add that this was pretty much the time that I was going to do this anyway.
Exactly.
It was actually set for today, about an hour from now, figuring for Pacific time. So anyhow, thrilled to be here and thrilled to have so many of you here. This is a record crowd for our surveys, and we're really glad to be able to do this for you. We know it's been a crazy time. We hope you enjoy the next hour. Let me remind you, it is all recorded, and as a result of registering for the webinar, you will receive a recording in your email tomorrow or Monday latest. So no need for you to take crazy notes on this or even be flashing photos of the screen. Just kind of let it come at you. Think about what's going on out here. This has really turned out to be a great survey for us. Most of the time, as those of you who are veterans of this know, I spend a lot of time talking about tracking, right? How do things look this year compared to last year or 3 years ago? But as a result of the coronavirus crisis, I pretty much tore up the presentation that I had been working on about a week or so ago and started looking at this data through the coronavirus lens. What does the data tell us that really helps us better understand what's going on out there? And even though the interviews were done in January and February, right before all hell broke loose, that does give us a good snapshot of where people were back then. But I think we can use this data, do a little extrapolating here, and actually learn a lot about what people are thinking and how we can shape our programming and messaging during this really unique time. We've been doing these studies for 16 years, as Joel mentioned. Thanks to him, he was the guy who prodded me into doing the multi-format thing. So you're going to see 14 different formats this year, and I think that's going to be also very helpful to you as well. I'd like to just take a moment and give a shout out to my staff at Jacobs Media, Jason Hollins, our research director, Lisa Riker, Elnora Lowe, and really the entire staff. Everybody busts butt for several months on this survey, and we really appreciate all of their effort. I also want to mention, you'll notice if you look on our title screen here, something looks a little weird, right? We've got all this technology, and then we've got this coronavirus ugly logo here that I'm now kind of looping around. And that's to remind us that things are not normal, as if we absolutely need a reminder. But I just wanted to mention that we are going to field a flash study next week about the coronavirus, very much in the same format that we do Techsurvey. It'll be a much shorter questionnaire. I'll have details at the end, but in the event you're not here an hour from now, here's the registration URL. You can get information, register your station for it. If you choose to, the deadline for registration is close of business tomorrow. So if you haven't done so, think about it. I think it might be very informational for your radio station and your situation. So we're all working in strange places, or I think most of us are, and I wanted to give you a look at my little hovel here. This is not where I normally am. I'm in my lower level, better known as a basement, doing this presentation for you. And hey, if you want to have a little fun here, take a selfie of the weird situation that you happen to be in right now, your home office, your spare bedroom, the kitchen table, and slap it up on my Facebook profile there, facebook.com/FNJacobs. Also, if you want to tweet during this, my Twitter handle is @FNJacobs. So we'll go from there. All right. Let's see. Oh, and this is Lou Valentino's dog. So I know many of you are actually sitting there with pets watching this whole thing, and pets are absolutely welcome. Let them bark as much as they want. All right, so this is what it normally looks like when I'm about to hit the stage here. Every year I present at Joel's event, Worldwide Radio Summit, at the exact same time, and the Benstown Iron Imager contest precedes me here. There's the Benstown Babe, and those two guys in the middle are competing to produce a commercial or whatever in a short period of time, and that's your MC Jack Diamond there doing his thing, and you can't see me, I'm out of the picture there, but I'm nervously standing over on that side of the stage, waiting for this to end so I can get up there. Joel, give me a quick introduction. So I just wanted to set the scene and let us feel a little Burbank, California here, even though we are a gazillion miles away from Burbank, California. Let me run you through the methodology and then we'll get to the good stuff. Huge turnout this year. Thanks to those of you on this webinar who were stakeholders, 504 strong, producing 46,008 responses. So it is massive. As I mentioned before, our interview dates Jan 7 to February 9th. And, you know, I started thinking about this the other day. We just barely got this thing in before everything started getting crazy here. So talk about maybe being a little lucky and a little fortunate. But January 7th through February 9th was completely clean of all the weirdness. As I think most of you know, most respondents are members of your radio station databases. However, some stations post link on their websites or social media pages. It's a web survey collected online. We do use Nielsen market weighting. So for example, 400 surveys in Philadelphia. A big market will count more than 400 surveys in a smaller market like, say, Pensacola. And here's the big caveat here. Unlike the infinite dial study that I know a lot of you watched last week, or a Gallup poll where they usually have about 1,000 respondents in tab matching the population, right? The gender and age and ethnography. That's not what this is. This is a sample of generally core radio listeners. And I'm a believer in the 80-20 rule, right? I mean, 20% of a population produces about 80% of the results. And here you're looking at the 20, and there's a lot of them here. 46,000 people would fill up Camden Yards in Baltimore, Maryland. And just a sad note, this is the first day of the baseball season, or what might have been the baseball season. And I put this photo up a couple of weeks ago and looked at it the other day, and a little tear came to the eye here. I'm definitely missing baseball already, and I know many of you are missing baseball and all sports. So here's the format key for the study. That kind of houndstooth blue bar at the very top there always represents the average response for every question. And then we've got our 14 formats, all color-coded here, so you can really focus on the format or formats that are most salient and important to you. And on a lot of these charts, you'll see the formats will either align to the left or the right of average, either running higher or lower than what we would see for the average response. Well, if you've been a veteran of our tech surveys, you know all about the pyramids. We have been using them from year one to be able to actually show a lot of different data points on one graphic. We have two pyramids now. That's how much technology has grown since 2004 or 2005 when we started these. So the first pyramid I'm going to show you is for broad media categories. Do people have a social media profile? Do they stream video? Uh, those kinds of, do they have a smartphone, right? We're not dealing in brands here. We're really dealing in big platforms. So here's the media pyramid for 2020. And on the right, that whole stripe going top to bottom is last year's totals. And so we can kind of A/B, we can kind of go back and forth between last year and this year to be able to kind of see the difference. So go all the way down to the very, very bottom of the pyramid, the base. Those are the things that people do the most or gadgets that they own the most. You can see 95% of our overall sample watches TV or video 1 hour a day or more. And that is flat, exactly the same as last year. So moving up the pyramid, we see smartphones, and they're actually continuing to grow, which is just astonishing to me because when we started this study, smartphones were just really beginning to come into play. The iPhone was moving out and things were definitely beginning to happen. So we see smartphone growth every year. Now, obviously that's slowing down as smartphones move into the 92% range, but they are in fact still growing. I also want to draw your attention to AM/FM radio listening, also 1 hour a day or more, healthy at 90%, but down a tick from last year, which was down a tick from the year before. So just gentle erosion here among our core sample. Then comes social media, pretty flattish from where it's been. And now here come the emojis, thumbs up and thumbs down to signify areas that have shown some really serious growth or the lack thereof. Streaming video has grown from 70 to 74%. People who stream video 1 hour or more in a typical week. The ability to connect a phone to a car, that's also up. More than 7 of every 10 are able to do that. Downloading radio or music-oriented apps on a smartphone, that's almost 7 of every 10. That's up from 65% last year. We've seen a nice kick this year in streaming audio, now at 65%, up from 59 the year before. Smart TVs, they are proliferating. Now 6 of every 10 of our respondents has an internet connected television. That's up from 54% last year. And based on our trip to CES back in January, that's going to continue to rise. They keep making these things better and better. Here is a new entrant on the pyramid, hearables, right? Wireless headphones, earbuds, AirPods. First year we've actually asked about it specifically, and what a nice debut, right? 4 of every 10 people are working there. All right, I'm getting messaged here that I'm not full screen, so let me just make sure I am full screen. All right, well, this is as full screen as it gets, so I hope you guys can see all of this because it's telling me it's full screen. So I hope that is the case. All right. Smart speakers. Wow. They just continue to grow and grow and grow. 1 in 3 respondents now owns an Amazon Echo, a Google Home, or a similar device, up from 27% last year. Podcasts. We got a real nice jump for podcasts here. 1 in 4 respondents now listen to podcasts on a weekly basis. It was kind of flattish to down last year. Well, this year it's up from 21%. So that's good to see. And then the smartwatch, still not a ubiquitous must-have gadget, but still 18% now have one, up very healthy from 13% last year. So that's the pyramid. Now here comes the fun part. We can actually slice and dice data here, and this is what's known as the Venus and Mars pyramid, men on the left, women on the right. How do they differ in terms of media, technology, and gadgets? Well, believe it or not, they actually differ quite a bit less than they did when we first started doing these surveys. Men were quite a bit ahead in technology. That's not the case now, but there still are some areas where men are more immersed in tech than women. And I just put up these little male symbols here so you could actually see what those areas are. Streaming video, smart TV ownership, connected car, satellite radio, by 8 points over the women. Podcasting a little higher for men, and HD radio quite a bit higher for men. What about women? What do they do more than men when it comes to technology? Well, as we've seen every year since it has existed, they are clearly more connected socially on sites like Facebook and Twitter. They are more likely to own a tablet, and as we consistently see, they are more apt to play video games. And I know a lot of you are going, whoa, 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 what's that about? Because when you think about video games, you think of those guys sitting down in their basement playing Fortnite or whatever. But we define video games as, yes, Dungeons and Dragons and Fortnite and all of those complex games, but also playing Words with Friends or Candy Crush or Angry Birds on a smartphone or whatever. And women are very involved in that area of video games as well. Now, a number of years ago, we ran out of space on the pyramid, and that's when many of these brands started emerging as being very, very important. And so we created a brand pyramid. So instead of social media, now you're going to see Facebook and Twitter. Instead of streaming video, now you're going to see Netflix and Hulu. So let's take a look at the reveal here for the brand pyramid for 2020. Same drill. We've got last year on the right. I did pop AM FM radio at the bottom so you can just see how it sits. The number one brand right above AM FM radio is Facebook. 7 of every 10 respondents are on Facebook at least weekly. That actually is up a tick compared to last year. Then comes Netflix, flat at a very healthy 55% last year to this year. Then our first thumbs up emoji for your streams. Not quite sure what's driving that. I'd like to think it's just better promotion and awareness. But now we're moving to about the halfway mark of people who say in the last week they listened to the stream of the station that sent them the survey. Here's a thumbs down emoji for YouTube, which has been trending down the past couple of years. We weren't sure what that was about, but we're really beginning to think now that the growth of platforms like Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime have definitely begun to diminish the kind of videos that YouTube was famous for. Case in point, look at Amazon Prime. It's at 37%, up 7 percentage points from last year. Instagram looks healthy, but let me skip up to Hulu. It's gone from 18 to 23%. And then just a couple of rungs up is a brand new entrant, Disney Plus. It debuted in November and is already at 21%. So when you look at all the streaming video now that has really overtaken and captivated us, that probably has put a lot of pressure on the incumbent YouTube. Spotify also has definitely had a good year as well. Snapchat up a bit, iHeart down just a couple of points. So that is our brand pyramid for 2020. And here's another interesting way to actually look at these brands. The generation gap pyramid with millennials on the left and baby boomers, parents and grandparents on the right. And without me even doing any analysis here, you can just see with the naked eye, right, that those gold bars for millennials in almost every case are quite a bit wider than the light bluish bars that we see for boomers. And that's because millennials are much more connected to brands and specifically technology brands. So let's look at what do millennials do more than boomers. And in order to represent that, a symbol of the millennial generation, yes, it's Lizzo, who, by the way, is from Detroit, as are we at Jacobs Media. So it's always nice to honor a hometown artist here. And as you can see, there's a whole lot of Lizzos on the millennial side of this chart, right? Because millennials use Facebook more than boomers, Netflix, the home station stream, YouTube, Amazon Prime. I mean, you can just move up, and some of these are huge. Look at Instagram there. More than a 3-to-1 difference between baby boomers and our millennials. Hulu, also just a huge gap there. Disney Disney Plus, 4-1 difference there, just massive. And then of course Snapchat. Talk about the quintessential millennial brand, and you can absolutely see the difference there. But let's not leave boomers out. And so, of course, the symbol of baby boomers would be the Queen of Soul, Aretha, also from Detroit. And we only have three Rethas on here. Boomers are more likely to listen to broadcast radio than millennials. Yep, you knew that, and now you can see it quantified. They're more likely to have satellite radio, and they're also more likely to subscribe to TuneIn. So let's get to what I know a lot of you are very interested in, radio's vital signs, right? With all this media and technology floating around out there, why are people still listening to radio? What is it about broadcast radio that still captivates people? So we give them a long list of potential assets, and we ask them to tell us which are the main reasons why they're still listening to broadcast radio. So go all the way up to the top. And number one is ease of use in the car. And you know, even though that may not seem like an obvious choice for people, the fact is that's a big difference. And as dashboards have gotten even more complicated, that one button solution that is radio in the car really stands out to a lot of people. That's mentioned by 7 of every 10. Look at the second big driver here. Radio is free. In a world rapidly being dominated by monthly subscription fees, radio is free. Yes, you have to put up with commercials and hearing Stairway to Heaven too often and all those things, but the fact is it is not showing up on your credit card bill, so that's important. 6 of every 10 mention personalities, so we know that's a big deal. Music is also a major driver. But then we get to what we call the emotional benefits. These are things that don't usually show up in billboard slogans, but they really are a big part of why people listen to the radio. We're talking about a feeling of connection, companionship, what's going on locally, mood elevation. Let me show it to you in a different way. This is the same chart, but I've just highlighted these emotional underpinnings, these emotional benefits of radio. And you can see exactly what's going on there. These are all things, by the way, that are sort of part of the coronavirus story that we're talking about now. Feeling a connection, companionship, local context and information, to be informed in an emergency, to put me in a better mood. Those are all key elements of why people listen to the radio. And you can absolutely see them pop here. This is an interesting thing as well, because when we look at a lot of these drivers for listening to radio and we break them out by gender, we can see that women are clearly more motivated to listen for almost all of these reasons than than are men. And so you can definitely see what's going on there. I'm trying to get rid of this bar down here at the bottom. Let me see if I can. No, that's not going to do it. Yeah, well, there we go. For some reason, it is not disappearing, and I can't make it go away. All right, all right. Sorry about that. I keep getting messaged by these guys, and I just can't make it go away. So again, yeah, women definitely more emotional attachment. And so even if you program a male-oriented radio station, be cognizant of the fact that women clearly respond to a lot of what makes radio special. And as you saw there on that chart, local matters. But we ask it a couple of different ways. This is an agree-disagree question we have asked for many, many years. One of radio's primary advantages is its local feel. And we've got 45% strongly agreeing, 42% agreeing. I mean, that's massive. That is clearly a huge, huge reason why people enjoy radio, because local is absolutely part of radio's secret sauce. And you can see the trend upper right. Look at how every year local becomes even more important. And my suspicion there, I've got no data to back it up, but that as media becomes more national and becomes more global, No question at all that local radio actually does resonate. And look at the degree of agreement with all the different demographics there. Here's another key point as well. Most people feel a connection with their favorite radio station. The agree disagree is I really feel a sense of connection to the station that sent me the survey. Look at the degree of agreement there. 7 of every 10 say absolutely that's me. And again, look at the continuities as we go down the demographic groups, gender, and generation, and whether you're a fan of a music station or a spoken word station. I pull out the people who are into DJs here. This is from that chart that we just saw a moment ago. This is the 59% of people who say DJ shows and hosts are big reasons why I listen to the radio. You can see that the female numbers are a little higher, but look at the interesting skew on generations there. With the exception of Gen Z, our teens, you can definitely see a linear progression from the silent generation, the greatest generation, up to millennials. Millennials that are listening to the radio clearly are rooted to its personalities. All right, we're going to shift gears and talk about word of mouth. Word of mouth is very, very important. Recommendation is really the foundation of all of that. And that is what is known as the Net Promoter Score. I did not come up with this, sadly, but a bunch of guys from Harvard did, and it has really become an industry standard for recommendation, whether you're staying in a hotel or renting a car or that kind of thing. And the way the scale works is this. On a scale of 0 to 10, where 10 means extremely likely and 0 means not at all likely, how likely are you to listen to the radio station that sent you this survey? Very high bar here. In order to be a recommender, a promoter, you have to give the station a 9 or a 10. Detractors are 0s through 6s. And then you can see the calculation at the bottom. You take your promoters, you subtract the detractors, the 0s through 6s, you come up with a Net Promoter Score. We have been asking the Net Promoter question from the very beginning. Let me show you what it looks like this year. The average Net Promoter Score was a 43 for all the stations in the survey, and I'll show you how that is in context with previous years in a moment. But note that women are more likely to recommend their favorite station than are men. This happens every year. And by the way, it's not just radio, it's most other products. Note also that there actually is a skew. The younger you are, the greater the likelihood that you might recommend the station. And then music fans also more apt to recommend the radio station as well. Here it is by formats, and I know you're going to be very interested here. Make sure you know where the average bar is. That's this 43 right here, same score I showed you before. So formats to the left have higher Net Promoter Scores. Look all the way to the left. See that huge green bar there, 77? That is Christian radio. They are not included in the survey. We do a separate Christian music survey. But I just wanted to show you what great looks like, because obviously that is off the charts. And then right next door is public radio. We also do public radio in a separate survey, also with a stellar Net Promoter Score of 71. Now, commercial radio doesn't do as well, as you can see, but the top format this year is rock, followed by country, CHR, rhythmic urban, and hot AC. Now you look all the way to the right, and these are the tougher nuts to crack here. Fans of news talk and alternative radio, clearly a much, much tougher kick. Here's the trend since all the way to the very beginning, Techsurvey 1. It was actually called Tech Poll back then. In 2005, the Net Promoter Score for every participating station was 42. Here we are 16 years later, it's 43. So you can see there's been some ups and downs, but radio has really hung in there extremely well as a medium, as a platform that people recommend. And I think that is very encouraging. This is a brand new question. This is something that we have wanted to do for a couple of years, and we finally found a little bit of breathing room to be able to actually pull this off. But the idea is, we know there are hard numbers that actually signify or that actually describe radio's reach and Spotify's reach and Pandora's reach and satellite radio's reach, hard numbers. But then there's also the perception that people have of how many people actually listen. And so the idea was, let's see if we can actually figure out, is there a gap between perception and reality in terms of the overall reach of some of these platforms? So let's start with SiriusXM. We got this right off their earnings report. We had to do a little bit of voodoo math on all this stuff, but they have 30 million subscribers, and we broke that out across the population. That's about 14% of the population. What does the Techsurvey audience think is the actual reach of SiriusXM? Yeah, they think it's twice as high at 38%. So there's a gap in satellite radio's favor. Now, for Spotify and Pandora, we used the Edison Triton Infinite Dial Survey that was just put out last week. Now, it's for 12 plus, so it doesn't quite match 18 plus, but I think it's close enough that you'll be able to really get an idea of, yes, another gap, because according to Edison Triton, Spotify has a weekly reach 12 plus of about 22%, but our sample thinks it's actually as high as 39%. Similarly with Pandora, in the Infinite Dial, it's at 18%, but twice as big in the eyes and ears of our respondents. And so finally, we come to broadcast radio, and you all know this number, 92%. That comes straight out of Nielsen. That is the weekly reach for adults in the Nielsen survey. But what does our core radio audience think radio's reach is? Yeah, even radio fans discount the value, the importance, and the impact of radio. So that's a conversation that hopefully will extend beyond today. I mean, I've talked to a number of people here who I've revealed this data to, and everybody has different theories. Radio stations don't market enough, and therefore the profile isn't as good as it could be. We don't tell our story as well as we should. I mean, all of those things are part of the story here, but that's something to definitely think about. All right, so here's something that we do every year that's really a very interesting measure of how people listen to your stations. We ask them to think back to the previous week and how they actually access content for your brands. And we ask them to assign a percentage to each of the different ways that they might actually listen to your station, whether it's in the car or on the stream or any of those things. So take a look at the pie chart here, and you can see the biggest slice of the pie, 44%. That's the consumption for people who are listening to the average radio station in their car. That's the biggest slice. And the second biggest slice is 21%. That's people who listen on a regular radio at home, work, or school. So that's what's known as traditional radio. And if you look at the box in the upper right-hand part of your screen, that's that 65% of all radio listening that on average is on regular radios. Digital now makes up about 32% of consumption. And when you take a look at some of these digital slices, they are significant, right? People listening to the stream on a computer, that's 18% of consumption. Mobile apps accounting for 7%. Alexa, smart speaker up to 5%. Podcasts even 2%. So that's kind of the lay of the land. But to put things in perspective, let's go back over time, all the way back to 2013. And let's look at that traditional line and how it's moved in 8 years. And you can see it started at 85% back in 2013. It's down all the way to 65% people listening on regular radios. And then conversely, I just drew the line for digital. It has more than doubled during this time period from 14 to 32%. I'm thinking at some point these lines are going to touch each other. I'm not a good enough mathematician or extrapolator to be able to tell you when that's going to happen, but I think this is a big topic right now, as people are definitely sitting in their homes trying to figure out how to listen to your radio station, and they may not have a regular radio, and so the stream becomes very, very important. All right, let's talk podcasting. I'm going to take a sip of water here. Hang on. All right, podcasting. Thank you. I needed that sip of water. Let's take a look and see what's going on with podcasting. You actually saw this on the pyramid. 12% listen to a podcast every day, 14% listen every week. So those are the heavy podcast users. But notice that big red slice off to the side. Those are the podcast nevers. 44% tell us they never listen to podcasts or never have. Now, the good news for the podcast community is that it was 49% last year. So clearly it's shrinking, but it still makes up a plurality of all people in Techsurvey 2020. So, what's been the overall trend for podcasting? It is clearly going up. 2016, 20% listen to a podcast every week, now all the way up to 26%. You can see the demographic groups that really shine for podcasting are younger people, millennials, and their younger brothers and sisters, Gen Z. If you're a fan of spoken word radio, you're more into podcasts. And oh, by the way, if you're into video on demand, yep, there is a connection between video on demand and audio on demand. And you can see that down there at the bottom. People who are way into video on demand are also into audio on demand, better known as podcasts. Now, I just flashed up that little PRTS public radio weekly consumption banner there at 34%. And this really does, I think, give you a good idea of the difference between public radio fans and commercial radio fans. Clearly, podcasting is more in the realm of public radio. They have a much longer, better track record for it. And if you look at some of the most popular podcasts out there, many of them are either from public radio or rooted in public radio. What format fans are into podcasts the most? Alternaheads and sports nuts. Sports fans, by the way, are just into any and all content, digital, analog, cuneiform. It doesn't matter. As long as it has to do with sports, it is absolutely there. This is something about podcasting that is really interesting. Even though the majority of the world does not listen to podcasts, of those who do, it becomes addicting. We ask those who listen to podcasts on a weekly basis. Last year, have you been listening to more podcasts, fewer podcasts, or about the same amount? Look at that more slice. 4 of every 10 say they're listening more, and that's actually trending up. Look upper right there. You can see that podcasts actually seem to become more addicting over time. And it's millennials who are clearly the most into podcasts. How do people listen to podcasts? The smartphone. Clearly the dominant way to go here, followed by listening to a podcast on a computer, a desktop, or a laptop, a car, significant, a tablet as well. But look at smart speakers. And a lot of people in podcasting believe that smart speakers is really going to be a great gateway to podcast discovery, access, and distribution. And I think they're right. Clearly, there is a seamless, sort of frictionless way to be able to use a smart speaker in order to call up a podcast. But let's zoom in on those podcast nevers for a moment. That's that ugly 44% slice all red here. What's the story with those folks? Why do they not listen to podcasts? Well, the big reason here and the big excuse, I think better put, by a majority is I'm just not interested. But we actually came up with a different potential negative here, and that's in green that you see there. It really popped. We hear this in focus groups when we ask people, why don't you listen to podcasts? And people often tell us, I'm just not into spoken word. I don't like to listen to people talking, whether it's on a morning show or a podcast. And you can see that actually is the reason that 1 in 3 podcast nevers say never to podcasts. But then there's all the clunkiness that comes along with podcasts that really doesn't have any impact on video on demand, video streaming, but it impacts podcasting. A lot of people just don't get what podcasts are, how to find them, or maybe they don't have an app on their phone, or they don't know what it is, or it just is a hassle. And this is still some of the kludginess that the podcast community has to work through in order to get those podcast nevers down to a much more respectable level. Let's talk streaming, audio and video. Now, yes, you've seen this before. This is the brand pyramid that I showed you, but I wanted to show you the overall trend for how these video streaming brands are all doing. Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, Hulu, Disney Plus. I mean, we are seeing mega growth here. They are the hottest brands on this chart. So it kind of stands to reason that there's a whole lot of streaming video going on. In fact, 44% say they stream video on a daily basis. And look at the trend, upper right there. Every year it climbs higher, driven by Gen Z and millennials. Streaming audio, as you saw on the pyramid, doing well. 46% listen to some streaming audio on a daily basis. It is, in fact, trending upwards. And look at the age trajectory there. Really nice, right? Definite growth. The younger we get, the more streaming that we do. I think that sounds right. So what do people actually stream when it comes to audio? Well, this is a skewed sample. These are people who love your radio stations. But as my friend Peter Smythe always says, it doesn't have to work this way. Yeah, a lot of them are into listening to your station on the stream. 2/3 of streamies say that. And then we move into this sort of narrow range here, a lot of compression here between Pandora, other local streams, YouTube, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. This is an area that we haven't delved into much, but we are getting into more and more. What about paying for content? What does that look like? So on the left are people who pay for video subscriptions, and on the right are people who pay for audio subscriptions. And you can see video subscriptions are quite a bit more popular. 84% of our overall sample subscribes to at least one video streaming service. Only 60% subscribe to an audio streaming service. So let's take a look at the video platforms here that people subscribe to the most. And this is why Netflix has done so well. It is exceptionally popular, but Amazon's right there as well, really on the back of their entire Amazon Prime platform there, because you know when you subscribe to Amazon Prime, you get Amazon Prime Video. And then again, look at Disney. I mean, right there next to Hulu. In terms of subscribership. None of these other fledgling platforms are even in the ballpark with the top 4. Now here's audio subscriptions. And again, Amazon Prime Music definitely gets the same kind of boost because of Amazon Prime. Better than a 2-to-1 lead over Spotify Premium, Apple Music, Pandora's pay service, iHeart's, and so on. So this gives you an idea of the overall pecking order. How do people feel about subscription fees? Now remember, this is before the economy just started cratering in the last couple of weeks. Agree, disagree. I am concerned about the growing number of subscription fees I'm paying for media content. And as you can see, more than 6 in 10 agree or agree strongly with that statement. And there's a great consistent degree of agreement across our various demographic groups, with men being a little bit more PO'd, but those are men for you. And then here's the flip side. I pulled out the people who mentioned way back when that one of the reasons they love radio is that it's free. And I wanted to show you the profile on these people because they're kind of the opposite of what we've been looking at before. And you can see that the younger you are, even though you may subscribe to services, you're more price sensitive. And so we have to start thinking ahead now in the next 4, 8, 12 weeks, as more and more people are out of work or being pinched financially, and those Visa and American Express and Discover bills come, and you start going through looking, wow, look at all the stuff we subscribe to. You have to wonder if radio doesn't really have a great promotable advantage here, because in a sea of subscription content, it is in fact free. All right, smart speakers and voice, which is really the bigger trend here. So why am I showing you that people don't have radios in their homes? Because smart speakers, as a lot of people have posited, could in fact replace radios in homes. So what you're looking at up there on top is a really disturbing trend. These are core radio fans, and only 8 of every 10 of them have a working radio at home where they live. And you can see that's been pretty consistently sliding now for the past 5 years. Take a gander at Gen Z and millennials, and it's even more disturbing. Only 2/3 of them have a working radio where they live. So this is an issue for us, and it's an issue for us right now this week, because as people are sitting at home trying to figure out what to do, many of them may be discovering they don't even have a radio at home. But more and more of them have a smart speaker. In fact, 1 in every 3 do now. Look at that 4-year trend. That looks like iPhone growth, right? For those of you who remember what that looked like back in the 2005, 2006 zone. And you can see millennials, but also Gen Z and Xers right up there with smart speakers. So let's take a deeper dive into what's going on with smart speakers, especially those who still haven't pulled the trigger and bought one yet. Now, you can see the number one excuse is, I just have no use for this. But I think it's the number 2 reason there that probably is more telling. We hear this in focus groups and listener advisory board groups all the time. People are flipped out about these devices, listening to their conversations, breaking into their privacy, all those things. And this is something that Amazon, Google, and the others are going to have to figure out how to overcome. In the States, and we've seen this every year, we have asked the question. Amazon Alexa is a huge, huge winner over Google Home, but Amazon's gap is narrowing over Google. Google's up 7 points, Amazon's down 3 points. We don't know if this is a trend, but clearly we know from our CES experience that Google is working very hard to narrow the gap. Now, what's interesting here is that the US is an anomaly. When you go around the world, it's not Alexa that's dominating, it's Google Home. And part of Techsurvey was Canada. And so I wanted to show you what the Canadian split looks like. And it's the other way. It's 66-43 Google to Amazon. So this is just one of those interesting things. Amazon has obviously done a much better marketing job here in the US than they have done in other areas of the world. Something that we continue to see be a trend, if you own one smart speaker, chances are increasingly higher that you own more than one. Now 56% of smart speaker owners own 2 or more of these devices. And then we get into a new question this year. Some of you I know saw this in our blog earlier this week. Where are they placing smart speakers around their homes? Answer, where the radios used to be. Yup, in the living room, family room, the bedrooms, and the kitchen. Those are the 3 biggest locations. Not as much in the den or the bathrooms or the basement or the patio, but all that's probably going to be coming in short order. This is important. What are the top use cases for smart speakers? What do people use them for the most? Well, the number 1 use case, 4 of every 10 listen to streaming music from a source like Spotify. And then we have a 4-way tie virtually for second place. Alexa, set the timer for 2 minutes. What's the weather in Detroit? And what's the stock market doing today? Those are all 3 key use cases, but a 4th is listening to an AM/FM radio station. And that's why there's a lot of excitement in the radio community about what smart speakers can do for our business here, especially as radios disappear in people's homes. But here's a bit of bad news. Fewer than 4 in 10 smart speaker owners have heard radio stations talking about or promoting these devices. So even though theoretically every radio station out there can be heard on an Alexa or a Google Home, radio maybe isn't doing the best job of actually promoting that benefit and that new distribution outlet. And again, in the middle of this coronavirus crisis, Smart speaker listening would come in very, very handy for radio. And here's another real plus here, because our data shows very clearly that if you own a smart speaker, you're probably listening to a little more AM FM radio as a result. Take a look there. We asked people as a consequence of um, having a smart speaker, are you listening to more, less, or the same AM FM radio? 21% say a little or a lot more versus 8% who say less. So that is a really solid net positive for radio. If your audience is buying these smart speakers and using them, and you are helping them connect the dots to promote them, that's a great thing. In-car audio, many of you know we've been heavily immersed in the car, not just because we're from Detroit, but actually through Techsurvey, we saw a lot of this stuff coming for a long way. And so here's the big slide. During an average weekday, how much of your total broadcast radio listening takes place in a car? 1 in 5 people say that's the only place I listen to broadcast radio. 1 in 3 say that's where most of the consumption comes from. And we break that out and trend it out over the past few years, and you can see it's been very, very consistent there in the low 50s. But look at the generations there. For young people, as we know now, many of whom do not have a radio where they live or where they work, the car is the only place they listen to broadcast radio. So that really becomes an important stat here. Here's something else, though, that is really a blinking warning, because more and more people can actually connect their smartphones to their cars. We're sitting now at 78%. Look all the way at the top. You can see the last 4 years trended. This is a record high. 78% of our overall sample say, yep, I now have a way to connect my phone to my car. And it skews young, no question about that. But look at the percentage for even boomers and silence. More and more people now can port in their content from their phones into their cars. So the days when the dashboard only had 2 knobs, 6 presets, and a CD player, and radio was pretty much all they had, that paradigm is really falling apart. So what do people listen to when they're in their cars? We ask our sample to think of an average weekday and how they actually split up, divvy up their listening. And the good news is broadcast radio is the biggest slice of the pie at 59%. A distant number 2 is satellite radio at 17. Then we get into personal music, streaming audio, and the like. So, hey, we're number 1. Except what would we have been 15 years ago, before smartphones could be connected to cars, before satellite radio really began to take off? I don't know, maybe that 59 would have been more like 89, 90, something like that. But this is where we are today. Let me show you, though, the future, because we isolated people who actually drive a car that is fully connected with a system like Ford Sync or Chrysler Uconnect. Watch the green slice. Yep, it goes down to 52%. That's a 7% net loss. And look who the big winner is. It's satellite radio. Satellite radio offers many things that broadcast radio does not, in terms of variety, lack of commercials. And when people buy new cars and there's that satellite radio trial, they can dig in and get into satellite radio in a big way. And you can really see that outcome here. Well, mobile phones have been a big part of the conversation of all the different tech that I've showed you. Let me jump into a couple of new questions here that I think you'll find fun and interesting. Agree, disagree. This is from Seth Ressler. I rarely never answer my phone if it's from a number I don't recognize. Yeah, turns out that's true, right? Almost 90% of people agree or agree strongly, and only 1% will answer the phone no matter what. They are the telemarketer's dreams. These are the people who are still buying encyclopedias and reverse mortgages and all that stuff. But most people, if they see a number they don't recognize, they are not going to answer the phone. Let it go to voicemail. And you can see that's pretty across the board. Here's another one. I generally prefer to communicate via text rather than speaking with people over the phone or in person. Those of you who have children know exactly what's going on here. Now, it turns out it's kind of split between people who are fine with talking versus those who would rather text, but we did isolate out the text-oriented people to see who they were, and they clearly skew female and heavily millennial. What about radio or music apps? This is what we tend to make at Jake Apps, our mobile app company. And you can see we have a very high percentage this year. This is as high as it's ever been. 72% of those who own a smartphone or a tablet have downloaded a radio or music-oriented app. And the great thing is this is the conduit to a younger audience, as you can see. The younger you are, the greater the likelihood that you've done this. And we have a virtual three-way tie at the top between the YouTube app, Pandora app, and apps like the kind we make for radio stations at 47%, and that's up 5 points from last year. And that leads us to this question. What kind of app would you like your favorite radio station to have? Would you like them to have an individual app that is just for their brand? Or would you rather that they have an aggregated app that has hundreds of radio stations available to you? So you can see it's no contest here. A majority select the individual app over the aggregated app, and about 1 in 3 say, hey, they're pretty much about the same as far as I'm concerned. But definitely an individual app comes out way on top. How do people use their apps to listen to your radio stations? 16% say they listen frequently, 22% say occasionally, but let's look at the frequentlies to see who they are. And in fact, again, millennials and Xers lead the way there. I think this is an area that we should stop and just sort of touch on for a moment. A lot of people are not aware or don't know that their home station actually has a mobile app. Only 1 in 3 say, yep, I'm aware that the station has one and I have downloaded it. That's who you're looking at over on the right. Good news is it is trending up. Men are a little bit more likely to download your app, but how do we get that 34% number up higher, especially again, as people are cooped up in their homes? They may not have a radio, they may not own a smart speaker, but they definitely have a smartphone. And here are the formats where the awareness and app downloads are the highest. And again, sports fans, absolutely. They absolutely have to get that sports Jones there, even though there's no sports going on right now, but sports fans are more into their station's apps, followed by rockers, fans of hot AC, rhythmic urban, and urban AC. And people like station apps. A majority give an excellent rating to their favorite station's app. And I think that's also an acknowledgement that the station gets it, that the station isn't just about being on the radio, but provides its content on the device that people sleep with and carry absolutely everywhere. And those excellent scores are trending ever so slightly upwards the last 3 years, and very consistent across all the different demographic groups. Well, as I talked about when we were looking at the pyramid there at the beginning, hearables is a new category for us. So let's jump into that. Up on top there, you can see that 4 of every 10 people actually own wireless headphones or earbuds. Clearly a younger phenomenon there. But as we also learned, more of an ethnic phenomenon as well. Whites are less likely to have hearables, whereas Latinos, Asian Americans, and African Americans quite a bit more likely. Put a pin in that. We're going to come back to the ethnic aspect of hearables. Here are the formats, format fans that are most likely to own them, and we have rhythmic urban, CHR, and sports radio, 1, 2, and 2. And then there's the headphone issue, and this has become an issue with Nielsen. Many of you know for PPM, the suspicion has been that headphone listening has not been properly credited. Nielsen had a study in the field, I believe at the end of last year. I don't believe it has been released yet, trying to get a measure on what level of listening to broadcast radio actually occurs on headphones. So I thought, well, why don't we ask it too? So that's the question here. How much time do you actually spend listening to AM/FM radio while you're using headphones or earbuds? And you can see that even though the majority of people don't use headphones a whole lot, this group in here, this 22%, listens half the time or more with headphones. That's not a small percentage of people. And so let's take a look at that group here. And as it turns out, we asked this question 4 years ago in Techsurvey 2017, and you can see headphone listening is more popular today. It is very popular among young people. And again, look at our ethnic story as well. African Americans almost off the charts there. So clearly there is something going on. If you're at an urban station, headphone listening is a big, big deal for you. And hopefully Nielsen will be able to pick that up in their research as well. Well, typically at the Worldwide Radio Summit, we have people from the music industry. And so the question is, among those interested in new music and new artists, and that's 77% of our sample, what is the primary source? Not all the sources, but the one you go to the most in order to discover new music. Well, broadcast radio on any device is still number one. You can see, though, the air is slowly leaking out of the tire, but still at 38% dominates in this group over all the other outlets, whether we're talking Friends, Spotify, satellite radio, YouTube, Pandora. Those are all relatively small numbers. And as you can see, none of them are wildly trending up. So even though radio has lost some of its clout over the years, as there's been this tyranny of choice for other music services, if I were in the music industry and I didn't get an ad on a radio station, I know I wouldn't have a hit. You absolutely still have to go through radio. Here it is demographically, and this describes part of the challenge that radio is going to have in the coming years. While music discovery on broadcast radio looks very, very good with Xers, boomers, and silence, when we start looking at millennials and then gulp Gen Z, you can definitely see the storm clouds on the horizon. We're almost done here. I've got just a couple of more things to show you, and then we'll kind of jump into coronavirus for a moment. Appreciate your patience today. This is what's known as a Fred question. This is something that Fred wanted to know that probably nobody else wanted to know. We had a merch question last year, and this question is all about, do bumper stickers actually mean anything in 2020? So the question is, if they gave them away, would you put a bumper sticker for the station that sent you this survey on your car? 3% say, I already have one on my car, so that's cool. But 27% say, absolutely, I would put one on my car if they were made available to me for free. So who are those people? Yeah, they're younger fans, the same people who were putting bumper stickers on their car 2 decades, 3 decades, 4 decades ago. This could still be a significant marketing tool for radio if we ever drive our cars again. And here it is by format, led by rhythmic, urban, and rock, but still we have a lot of formats that are well over the average line of 30%. And then finally, we've been asking about online holiday shopping the last several years. Remember, Techsurvey is done in January and February, so people are very much aware of what they actually did the month earlier. And so the question is, during the holiday season, how much of your gift shopping was online? 8% say all of it. 37% say most of it. When we actually isolate that group, you can see clearly online shopping trending up with each passing year, becoming more and more popular. Be very interesting to see what this looks like in Techsurvey 21, right? And then again, millennials and Xers being the primary shoppers here, women a little bit more than men as well. And then, hey, it's a political year, I'm told. So we did ask a couple of questions. Here's the one I'm going to show you. How closely do you plan on following the 2020 US presidential election? And you can see 45% very closely, almost 4 of every 10 somewhat closely. But just looking at the very closely's here, you can see the Bernie Sanders problem right on this slide. Clearly, voting, engagement, all that stuff skews older and also skews toward people who actually have a definite party preference, whether you are a Democrat or a Republican. Independents and those who have no party affiliation, maybe they're just not as into it. And by the way, as you can see at the bottom, thank you, Rush Limbaugh. If you are into spoken word radio, chances are you are following the election as well. So, what the heck does it all mean, especially in light of the coronavirus crisis that we are all enduring, not just as radio professionals, but as people? And so I wanted to go and look at the data through the coronavirus lens. So let's look at some of the findings that actually inform us here. First of all, with people being home, we know smart TVs are proliferating like crazy. Video streaming is exploding. So if you're going to be cooped up, I guess 2020 is a good year to do that. Time to catch up on all that binge-worthy stuff that you just haven't had time to watch. We know radio does great in the car and at work, but clearly has shown big signs of erosion on the home front. And that's a red flag right now with people not being in their cars as much or in workplaces as much. We also know that radio's digital consumption is secondary. Most people are still listening to the radio via transmitters and towers, the broadcast format here. Digital consumption has always sort of been very second class, and that's something that radio operators need to think about, especially in light of what's going on right now. Station apps, massively popular, but as you saw here in Techsurvey 2020, a lot of people don't even know their favorite station has a mobile app. Put a pin in that one. And similarly, smart speakers are coming on strong. Now, 1 in 3 own one, but again, only about 4 of every 10 of them have actually heard radio stations promoting smart speakers, so there's a gap there. We learned that even back in January and February, subscription fees are a problem. They're annoying. Now, again, with what's happening economically, this may become an even bigger problem. And so the solution, of course, radio is free. We also know radio personalities matter. And when people are feeling bad, when people are scared, when people aren't sure what's going to happen next, that friendly voice, as we saw on the Y radio slide, the voice that is all about companionship, local information, emergency information, mood elevation, all the things we saw on that chart, this is where the personalities really kick in. And it was the females in our sample that really responded to radio's emotional benefits. Not a surprise, but good to know. And then finally, even before there was a coronavirus crisis, radio's localness was thought to be one of its huge advantages. And this really kicks in now because, as we know, the coronavirus crisis may in fact be global, and it certainly is national. But with most people, it's what's going on in my town. Can I leave the house? What is open now? What's going to be reopening? How is my community doing? What's going on? And this is where radio can be informational. So, what action steps might you think about in terms of these coronavirus findings? First thing would be to clean up your stream, because in the home, it's going to be the only way that many people can even access your content. But for programmers and managers that just don't really think about the stream very much, what's the experience? How does it sound? What's it like to listen to your stream? My advice would be, if you're in a PPM market, switch to total line reporting, if nothing else, because it would provide a smoother listening experience. I mean, unless your stop sets are perfect and not repetitive and not full of junk and all that stuff, people would rather hear commercials than some of the stuff that radio stations are putting in their stop sets on the stream. So if you can move to TLR, that would be something to think about. Two pieces of advice about your app: promote it and promote it. People love apps. Everybody has a smartphone. This is a way for you to be able to make that connection so people can listen to your radio station anywhere. And then make sure you know what's going on in smart speaker brand land with your brand, right? I mean, if your call letters are WMMR and that's how people refer to you, you're probably in pretty good shape. But if you're Eagle 97 or Jack FM, I mean, what is the device going to actually pull up for you? So you need to know what the proper commands are and then heavily promote them so the audience gets it. We were driving around while we could still drive around the other day, and I looked down at my dashboard and I was listening to Riff here in Detroit. And on the metadata, RDS message in the dashboard was a very helpful wash your hands kind of message regarding coronavirus. And I thought, that's a really interesting way to be able to take advantage of what in-car listening there is going to be, is to use that metadata more strategically. And then part and parcel to all of that is you have other conduits to be able to connect to your audience, particularly your email database and social media. Make sure that you know what messaging is going out on those platforms. I'm seeing some of the weirdest stuff that is tone deaf to what is going on in the country and in local markets right now. All sorts of strange promotions and giveaways. So go through there and make sure that your messaging is consistent, that it's appropriate, and that it's really in the context that your audience is in right now. I think every time you look at Techsurvey and you see the power of personalities, if you've got them, lean into them and lean into them hard, because these are your ambassadors. These are the people who make it better. These are the people the audience are attached to. They are not attached to your Leonard Skinner or Taylor Swift songs. Yeah, they like them, but they can get them anywhere. But it's your unique personalities that really matter, that form those connections. And then again, don't lose sight of those emotional needs on the Y radio chart. Those are the things that you are delivering to listeners right now. And I know a lot of you are receiving emails and social media posts, and they're talking about all the things I showed you. You put me in a better mood. You feel like part of the family. I really appreciate the companionship. It's great to have your voice right now in the midst of all of this. That's what this data has been telling us for years, and now we can actually see it playing out in real time. And then local, local, local. I mean, this is what radio is all about. I love the fact there's all these wonderful podcasts about the coronavirus crisis. I know many of them are doing very well. That's great. But people in Detroit want to know what's going on with this crisis in Detroit and in Des Moines, Des Moines, and in Decatur, Decatur, and on it goes. So this is the time to be a great local outlet. And oh, by the way, radio is free at a time when people are going to be scrutinizing those bills. Couple of things about the coronavirus survey that I just want to make sure you know. If you were a paying stakeholder in this year's Techsurvey, PRTS or Christian Music Broadcasting Survey, you are in for free for this, so please take advantage of it. If you participated in those studies but didn't pay, it's going to cost you $150 for a data processing fee, and if you have no connection to our company whatsoever, $250 again, a data processing fee. We're fielding this next week. It is a short window, March 31st to April 2nd. That's it. Get it in that window or it's not going to happen. The results are going to come almost immediately afterwards. They have to. I mean, this is going to be a snapshot of the audience. How are they feeling? What's going on? Do they still have their jobs? Are they listening to you, and on what devices? These are all the questions that we're going to be dealing with. You'll get your national data, and you're also going to get your local station data as well. And we're going to hold a webinar. It's not going to be as data heavy as this one. It's going to be a little bit of data and more thinking about what does all of this mean for us now. But if you want to get into this, you better hurry. There is a hard deadline of close of business tomorrow on this. And here's the URL, jacobsmedia.com/coronavirus-survey. So please let us know if you want to do this. You can go to that site. It'll tell you all about the study and what you need to do. And here's all the contact information. Our two URLs, Jacobs Media and Jake Apps, mobile apps, my email address, Twitter for both me and the company, our blog. We talk about this stuff on a daily basis. So come on in, check it out, and engage. And then once again, just to annoy you even more, don't forget the coronavirus survey deal. I'd like to thank all of you for being here. I know it's a crazy time to just get away from the insanity that is going on in your radio station or in your company and spend a little time with me. I've enjoyed it. I hope you have too. I am honored to be able to do this stuff with the radio industry, as is our entire company. On behalf of everybody at Jacobs Media and All Access, we thank you for being here today. And for those of you who are stakeholders, we could not do this without you. Thanks so much. Good luck. Let me know how you're doing. Let me know if this data helped. Definitely shoot me an email or shoot me a note or whatever. And I want to see some of those wacky pictures on Facebook that hopefully you've been posting of your weird little home office. So anyhow, be well, be safe, and wash your hands. Bye-bye.